This January 22nd, 2024, Committee
Recording
of
in
the Whole
progress.
meeting of the Village of Lake Bluff Village Board of Trustees. The clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Cole.
Here.
Trustee Fisher.
Here.
Trustee Freed.
Here.
Trustee Hatch.
Here.
Trustee Rappin is absent. Trustee Ryder.
Here.
Have a quorum.
Thank you. Next on our agenda are the non-agenda items and visitor for public comments. The Committee of the Whole allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Committee of the Whole on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the Committee of the Whole is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. I do not see anybody in the room today. What about online?
No, sir.
And I say we move on. Next is our general business. The Committee of the Whole will entertain requests from anyone present to modify the order of business to be conducted. And tonight, we only have one meaningful item to discuss. First on our agenda would be the consideration of the minutes from the January 8, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you.
Certainly pass these around.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the minutes?
I'm circulating right now. One page is page 6. I had a conversation earlier this evening with Trustee Ryder. On page 6, there were 3 changes, clarifications, and 1 typo. They're in red line format, so everybody should have a copy now. Does it capture what we talked about?
It does, even more than I expected, so.
Oh, good. I see a typo too.
Okay. The hits keep coming.
In the 4th paragraph,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm looking at wherever it says trustee Fisher, so I'm self-centered here, but I do see, it says she said she do not want. So I would just propose we change the language to does not. That's the second sentence of,
Yep,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Any more comments? I do not see any more comments. Clerk, please call the roll.
Do voice vote.
Oh, it's a voice vote, so all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you very much. The second item for tonight is a discussion regarding the static license plate recognition cameras. Andrew?
So if you recall, back in December, the last meeting of the year, there was a committee, the whole meeting conversation that Flock Representative Dan Murdoch attended, provided a product demonstration. There was a conversation had, there were some questions raised about elements of the agreement, and more or less ran out of time. And also thought it would be helpful to have some additional Flock representatives here. We do have with us on the Zoom call Hector Solomon Valdez. He is the Director of Local Government Affairs at Flock Safety. Hector, hopefully you can.
Yep. Good evening. Thank you all for having me.
And Hector, you were also going to have a council with you. I don't see them on the call yet.
I am pinging them, so should be having them in a couple of minutes.
Okay, great, thanks. And so where we last left the conversation was, I think I tried to summarize it in the previous memo that was delivered to the board back in December of late last year, that basically describes that the situation that we're in, we're, I guess, at a crossroads, whether or not to pursue the Flock agreement, and then if so, make sure we understand the terms correctly. If there's comfort enough moving forward, then we can put this in the upcoming budget as part of those conversations. So that's really where we left it.
Yep, exactly. And we had questions on the table that were related to data rights, length of data, the extent of the data, the property of the data, the length of retention of the data. And those were, I think, where the conversation was. And we had, it came also down to, okay, we're not comfortable with a couple of sentences. Can we change the agreement? We would like to change the agreement for these sentences to make a tweak here and there. That's basically where we ended, right?
Yes, it's my understanding.
So should we go back specifically? No, we do. Do we have Victor's counsel online. Victor?
Axel is coming on right now. I went ahead and shared the link with him. It should take him about less than a minute. My apologies here. That was on my end.
Thank you.
And I'll just generalize, and Hector and their counsel can correct me if I'm wrong, or Matt or Peter. But generally speaking, the way the data ownership was an issue, a part of the conversation at the last meeting, in December. And the way that works is the village does not become owner of the data unless and until there's a hit, then that data would come into our, under our control, and that it would be subject to then villages and the state's rules about governing keeping of documents and so forth, and subject to FOIA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one issue, and we understand that that's how that works. And then the other issue dealt with how Flock shared the data with others and how they use that data as well. And our understanding, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Hector, the way that you all handle the data and use the data is you use it to improve your product and services.
Correct. So there is a clause in there, and Mike Molina is already joining, so he'll be on in a second. He's our head of legal, where we provide the opportunity for Flock to access anonymized data for the benefit of the customer. And a specific example of that is, let's say there is a new vehicle type, let's say a Rivian vehicle that's never been seen by the cameras. It'll be anonymized, so it will not be showing it's coming from your jurisdiction, but anonymized in a way so that we can provide it to our mechanical Turks that will then classify that vehicle in a way that it's useful for departments when they're querying the system.
And Mike is on the call now too, their counsel, just in case you have a question.
I have so many questions. Mike and Hector, thanks for coming. My name is Taryn Fisher. I'm not going to pepper you right now, but just to start with what Hector just said, when you say it anonymizes the jurisdiction, can you just say, does it or does it not blur the license plate?
So it does not necessarily blur the license plate, right? So what it does is there's nothing saying that this is coming from Lake Bluff. The license plate itself, there's nothing attached to it saying this plate is owned by John Smith, etc. We don't have any databases in the Flock system to do that. And as you probably know, license plate information, that is belonging to the state, right? And so we're not attaching that to an individual. We are only looking at those images to improve the machine learning that assists your department in searching for a car. As you can imagine, every month there's new vehicle types, and if we don't improve the system constantly, it will not be useful to them in the case that there's an investigation.
Okay, can I ask you, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here. So when you're talking about improving the system, the way the agreement is written right now, that might be the intention, what you just described, but it doesn't limit what Flock can put under the umbrella of improving your system. And as far as I know, Flock and other ALPR platforms aren't regulated right now. So can you tell me what there is, or maybe just answer, what's to say you won't expand your definition of improving the technology to include other uses, and that is covered right now under the agreement, correct?
So I'll let Mike kind of answer the specifics on the contract itself.
Good evening, everyone. Mike Molina, head of legal at Block Safety. So the section that deals with anonymized data states that, Flock does not own and will not sell any of that data. The intention really is for that diagnostic and to improve the machine learning algorithm. I'd like to know kind of what scenarios you envisioned in
Yeah.
terms of what you're talking about, just to narrow it
Sure.
down, so make sure I'm addressing your question correctly.
Perfect. I can give you my question, and I can be more specific, but also I just want to point out that when you say Flock doesn't sell the data, when we talk about to third parties, aren't the other consumers in a way buying the data? Because consumers or clients of Flock nationwide will have access to the data from Lake Bluff citizens who are captured on camera, correct?
And I can answer that second part. So, no, only agencies, other police departments, right, that are given permission by your police department to access the data will have it, right? So, your police department has to approve, let's say, Quincy, Illinois, having access to your cameras, and every single search that an officer performs there that happens to look at your cameras, they also have to enter in a case number and a reference number, right? So your department still has the ability to audit them, and your department has the ability from the beginning to even accept their requests for access, but also has the ability to rescind that access at any point. Now, the benefit to both your police department and theirs is that crime is regional. Many times they will be working on cases that are, crossing the state, and so that is a benefit to both. But your department gets to decide, and your community gets to decide, both on, based on policy, who they share with.
So that sounds like a lot of extra work for my small town's police station, though, to have to audit every potential request. But let me ask you another question, or I can be a little more specific about what my concerns are. What is Raven and what is Wing?
So Raven and Wing are two other products that are provided by Flock, but are not up for discussion today. I believe in the general documents that you have, it kind of outlines all of Flock's products, but you all are purchasing Flock Falcon. Raven is an audio detection, gunshot detection product. Wing is one that integrates third-party cameras for real-time crime centers, et cetera.
Right, so when you are talking about improving systems and technology, is creating and improving both Raven and Wing covered in that umbrella? Or I guess to say, what I'm saying is, I don't believe your contract limits what you can do with our data. And to be clear, what Raven is, for anyone listening or for my fellow trustees on this panel, it's an audio detection service that would pick up audio so that Flock could determine and flag if there was sounds of aggression, like gunshots. But what that means is it's capturing audio, just in the same way that we are observing that Flock doesn't just capture license plates. It captures an image of the full car, including bumper stickers, including images of the person inside the car. So I have concerns about further use of the system to capture our children walking by, our citizens' rights to privacy, not knowing they're being taped. Same with Wing, networking into things like our citizens' Ring cameras. That seems like quite an overreach that we're not anticipating right now, and I don't feel great about opening up the door for that. So can you guys maybe talk a little bit about where you all are at with Raven and Wing?
Yeah, certainly I can. So with Raven, we wouldn't be able to train Raven off of because it is a gunshot detection only device. We're not training that product off of the Falcon product because that's a camera. So with Raven, we've trained machine learning algorithm to listen for an audio trigger, and what that is a firearm discharge. So once it hears that, much like if you own some type of audio detection in your home, and it's just waiting to hear that one thing, whether it's I have one, so if I say Alexa, it'll probably go off, but waiting to hear either Alexa or okay Google, and when it hears that, when it hears the firearm discharge, it's going to send an alert to local law enforcement. A lot of times times even before 911 is called and say, hey, a firearm was just discharged at Main Street and Broadway, and it will alert local law enforcement to perhaps head in that direction. It is not always listening, it's not listening to private conversations, it is just catching the sound recognition and then sending that alert. Similarly, the Wing device, that essentially is, if you already have cameras that your agency or your city owns, we can essentially Flockify it. We can add our software to that camera that you already have, so that way we can add that machine learning layover onto it so it can also recognize license plates. Because otherwise, that camera is just maybe taking photographs of vehicles, but it doesn't have that extra layer, which is the technology we offer to decode what it sees and tell you, hey, that is Illinois license plate 12345. So completely separate products, completely separate ways in which we train them, and completely different use cases. And from what I understand, from what Hector mentioned, is that you are not purchasing those products, and there is no those two things. It's not like a Venn diagram. We're not training them off of different products. They're separate.
So, but there is in this contract room for expansion of your analytics. And right now, I know that I was under the impression when I first learned about Flock that it would only be capturing images of the license plates. But when Dan came and talked to us, we saw a sample of what that image looks like. And as I just said, it's a full picture of the car. So my understanding is that Flock also is expanding its analytics to capture things beyond cars, like people, places, bicycles, animals. Again, how does, I don't believe that we are protected under this contract because of the broadness of that provision, that you won't expand your analytics to include other things that Flock cameras capture. Can you tell me how I might be misreading that provision?
Yeah, so are you talking about, just so we're on the same page, are we talking about section 4.3, the anonymized data section, or is there somewhere else?
There's two sections that I'm concerned about, but yes, so one is that the privacy protection of you're not selling our data, although I kind of disagree because, as I said earlier, one of your selling points is the ability to access cloud-based data from surrounding communities. And though
I think to clarify on that point, one of our selling points is to allow you to share with other local law enforcement through our platform.
Sure.
We're not selling your data, you are sharing your data.
Well, but it's a selling point that you have a network of communities. Otherwise, Flock isn't as appealing. Let me just
I'd
finish.
agree that certainly, it is a feature, yes.
Right, so the broadness of the language, to me, does not protect us from our data being sold, because it is how you get customers. It's how you get clients. And your mission, Flock's mission, is to have Flock cameras in every community. So again, part of the selling point of Flock is creating a network. And I don't know that down the line, our contract, as it was presented, protects us from a change, again, because you're not regulated right now, a change in how the analytics and the sharing and the management of the data in the cloud is monitored. So, but again, the expansion of analytics, the language in, it's 4.3, is very broad in that it says you can use it however you want in perpetuity to develop and expand your analytics. So I'd like to understand how maybe my reading is wrong, that we aren't protecting our citizens, that if down the line you want to use the camera to capture things beyond automobiles, for maybe it is just developing your AI technology. You mentioned Rivians, it might be bicycles, it might be individuals. This is how we determine it's a woman or a man, a person of color. identifying body traits, tattoos. So I don't really believe the contract protects Lake Bluff citizens from you expanding your use of analytics. Can you tell me if I'm wrong?
Yeah, I would disagree with the idea that we're not regulated at all. I mean, there are regulations, and we've also affirmatively had made representations that we do not capture any biometric data, and we purposely do not capture or involve ourselves with, or do not develop or intertwine ourselves with in any way, shape, or form any facial recognition. Our flagship product has been, and what we have sold to communities all around the country has been the focus of license plate reading technology, because we believe that that is objective. It is either a red Honda Civic or it is not. It is either an Illinois license plate or it is not. And that is what we have stood for since our inception. And I believe that the license that is, as it's written in our contract, says that you own the data. We are not going to share or sell that data. We will only allow you to share it, and that you are providing us with a limited access to that for the purpose of improving the services for you, not for the purposes of creating, new methods, or in any way trying to find people or any of those characteristics that you mentioned, such as race, ethnicity, gender.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but that's not what your contract says. It doesn't say that your use of analytics is to improve it specifically for the village of Lake Bluff. It says that it's used to improve Flock, so Flock can improve its own technology. That's what it actually says. So I appreciate that you're representing to me that it won't be used for biometrics, but that provision does not exclude biometrics. Earlier on in the contract, it might say the intention is not for biometrics, but to improve your own AI technology, you may down the line say, let's use what the cameras capture to see how we can define individuals. And my reading, as an attorney, I'm reading that paragraph, and I think you're entitled to use it that way.
So maybe the suggestion here would be, in order to improve the system, only considering parameters related to license plate reading, excluding biometrics, for example. So if we were to add that statement, you would be okay with that?
No, I'm not okay with anything right now. I don't, because first of all, I haven't heard anybody from Flock say that they're willing to make adjustments or revisions to their contract.
Okay.
But even so, I am far from being okay, because I have other questions. I'm not sure why Flock needs to retain any data for a month. Can you tell me about that? Why does Flock retain data for 30 days?
Certainly. So the data retention, our standard retention is 30 days. That is something that as policymakers, you can decide upon a different date. We have certain jurisdictions that decide on time periods that are closer to a year, others that have 14 days. We are the largest provider in this space, and what we've seen is that 30 days both protects civil liberties while providing your police department with a tool that is useful when solving crimes that many times don't go reported right away, right? And so it really depends on the needs of your jurisdiction. But again, we're trying to provide a tool that both protects privacy while being useful in the event of an investigation where evidence is not provided right away.
So I have a follow-up question on that, actually. And so my background is software engineering. I'm a software developer. I have about 15 years of experience on machine learning, exactly what we're doing here. And so I understand the processes of training and data retention and all these things that are client confidential, so I'm all okay with that. Paragraph 4.2 says, fourth line, fifth line, and a non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, royalty-free license to basically the data, okay? It actually goes counter to the 30 days, because if I have access to a Flock data, if I have training data that is dated more than 30 days ago, I could basically extract the data for other use. And so my question to you is, we're fine with the machine learning aspect of learning from new cars, Rivians, and improving your systems is for our benefit, and I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with the perpetual aspect of it. There should be an expiration of that, of viability of the data, of the ability to access of that data for training in the long term, because I believe that it is actually a liability or an issue related to what Taryn is talking about as well. So are you open to having a non-perpetual access to that data?
And I didn't catch the very beginning. You said 4.2 or 4.3?
4.2, line 5.
Yeah, so 4.2 is slightly different than what we're talking about with anonymized data.
Correct.
So 4.2 has to do with what we consider to be customer-generated data. That is information or data that we are ingesting into Flock from your systems. So one of the products that we offer is Flock OS, and it's very possible that if you do have other cameras or other information, such as perhaps where vehicles, police vehicles are located, that we can actually ingest all of that information and display it for you on the Flock platform. So that is the data that you generate. That information we do not keep indefinitely. That is just information that we are going to pull if there is a request through an integration that we would do through an API on the Flock portal. So that's why it is enumerated as its separate thing. So if we look at 4.1, that's customer data of what we've kind of been talking about in terms of capturing license plates. 4.2 is essentially data that you already have that you're allowing Flock to generate for whatever purpose because you want access to it potentially all in one dashboard. And then 4.3, the anonymized data, is when we take the license plate data, strip it of the metadata, and use that to train the machine learning algorithm. Let me know if I went too quickly there.
No, I follow you actually very
I know
clearly.
it's 3 distinct areas, yes.
But I think the item of the indefinite amount of time where you can actually capture and return data is still valid.
And 4.5 is also,
And so
Yeah.
I think there is a way to resurrect data after 30 days. And so I'm actually uncomfortable with the idea that for training purpose, we are allowing that data to stay indefinitely in your system. Is there a possibility, or we are asking for a possibility for that data to have an expiration as well?
The data that would be captured that is hard deleted on that 30-day basis, that is gone from the system. The data that would remain, that is stripped of the metadata, that is used to train our system, that potentially can exceed the 30-day retention, but it's not the data that you in the same exact form. Again, it would essentially be an image of a vehicle. You wouldn't know which agency that came from, which jurisdiction that came from, the camera location. You wouldn't have any of that. We would essentially have is almost like a Polaroid. If you're holding a photo in your hand, you don't know who took the photograph, you don't know when it was taken, you're not sure the location that it was taken, but you know that in that photograph is a brand new 2024 Lamborghini. That is what we're using to train the data. So it's not the same exact type of data that we would be holding if need be to train the data. And what I'll also say is we're talking about less than 1% of all of our images captured across all of our networks. We're not saying that we are going to capture all of Lake Bluff's images and train our machine learning on that. The anonymized data is a segment of all of our data. I'm just explaining that for the non-software engineers like myself that had to learn that.
Thank you.
so, but again, we're going to have a disagreement about what is anonymized, because where I sit, a license plate is connected to a car, and it's connected to an individual. An image of a car that has the license plate visible and any other identifying characteristics, a bumper sticker, a dent in the car that's familiar, the image, the outline, or the image through the window of the driver or the passengers. You're not taking any, from what I understand, what you just described, an image like a photograph, might be scrubbed of any metadata that connects it to Lake Bluff system, but it still is us allowing our citizens' images to be captured without their knowledge or approval and used by Flock for a very broad definition of usage, under 4.5 and 4.3. So here's another question for you. What does Flock have in place to protect from hacking?
Certainly. So we store the images in Amazon Web Servers, 256 encryption. All of the images are encrypted end to end. These servers are the same servers used by federal agencies such as the FBI and CIA. And so the highest level of encryption there. As far as as an organization, we ourselves are SOC 2 compliant and frequently, audit our internal procedures via the SOC 2 process.
Okay, now for the layman, I have no idea what you just said. Can you say it in a way that,
I
or
understand.
Regis, yeah?
Because I've used
Yes.
systems, and so our servers were next to the agencies mentioned for healthcare, not for surveillance. Basically, from the time what I understand is from the time the picture leaves the camera to the time it comes on the server, it's encrypted AS256. That is basically one of the highest standards for obfuscating information. So we're fine with that. So it's a good answer.
Okay, that's
Now-
nice to hear.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I was trying to sound as smart as my attorney friend on my team and
You
failed at
you
delivering it.
sounded super smart, super smart. Those are the places where I won't sound smart, because I don't get it, but I do want to know that, again, this is a lot of important information, that we are making a choice right now about doing a balancing test of okay, let me back up. Our citizens, we are making decisions about their rights to privacy. And Lake Bluff citizens have the right, the reasonable expectation that their comings and goings are to remain private. And I have serious concerns about what is the cost-benefit analysis we are doing here. What I'm hearing is, Flock is going to maintain for 30 days these images. For the concerns that have been brought to the table why we would benefit from Flock, I see no reason to keep images for 30 days. I think,
If I may.
I would love to hear from you, Chief, because
I
you're
know
my
you have a lot of questions
trusted.
stuff going on over there, so I
Yeah.
don't want to steal your thunder there. But no, for 30 days, that gives us a window, right? That gives us a window to say, or even, let's say there's a case that occurred on XYZ Street, right? Maybe the complainant, the victim, didn't know that something happened, right? But 2 weeks later, all of a sudden, they realize it, right? What if it's 3 weeks later? When we look at a month, we looked at it as a month, 30 days being kind of a good, safe window without overextending, right? But still giving us a window of opportunity to work in, right? To give that person an opportunity to maybe report that crime that we didn't before. Or, conversely, there's a crime occurred in one of our partner jurisdictions that we allow the access to, right? Hey, the vehicle probably went through your town. Here's the information we're looking for. We're trying to connect those pieces, right?
Yeah.
That gives us 30 days to try to investigate that case. But again, 30 days. So there's not this huge window of time that, and Hector can probably give you a better idea on some of those retentions. Hector, if I'm correct, most communities or some communities that do the public portal, they would say like what retention is and everything else. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So you'll have access to the transparency portal. That'll show you what the retention or show the community what the retention is. And if I heard the second part of was the part where like what is the average retention?
Yeah, do you have an idea of what that is, Hector? What the average?
Yeah, so the average retention is 30 days, and to the trustees, I think this is a very important question, and we truly mean it when we've seen that 30 days is that balance of providing law enforcement enough time to investigate, even if a crime is not reported right away. There are other communities that have lower retention rates, and there's some states that have lower retention. But then the flip side is that there are some that have longer. We're trying to fall in that sweet spot. But Flock, we leave it up to you. This is not a number set in stone to create that as part of policy. As policymakers, this is where you come into play. We objectively, because we don't make more money off of having a 30-day retention, can tell you that that is a good amount of time for your law enforcement to have an effective tool.
So from a time stamp, I hear that you're saying 30 days is what you would like. Can you live with a shorter amount of time, like 14 days, if that makes us comfortable? Is that something technically you can work with? That's my first question. And the second question for Hector is, let's say something happened and we're no longer comfortable. How long does it take us to break this contract? How can we basically expire this contract? If we say, something happened and we're no longer comfortable with its system, we want to cut this system out. What is the contractual setup for this contract to be terminated?
I saw the chief step away, so I think we can answer that. And Mike, I'll punt it to you since you're the attorney on how they can cancel their contract with notice.
Yeah, and just to parlay off of, before even the chief answers regarding the retention, this is not something that we created in a bubble, where we saw that a lot of the industry were actually doing, 1 year or indefinite retention. We thought that was too much, and that we should try to figure out what the perfect sweet spot is that did protect citizens' rights to privacy, as well as provide a tool to law enforcement, so it wasn't a waste of a product. So we partnered with a few organizations, NGOs, and the National Policing Institute, and NYU to try to come up with what was the perfect sweet spot, and they agreed that 30 days was enough time for police to actively investigate past crimes and make the public feel comfortable about deleting the images that we not use after 30 days. And going on the contract, so we don't have a termination for convenience built in the situation that you simply no longer want the product. I believe our standard contract is either 12 months or 24 months. So unfortunately, you would have the right to terminate if there was some type of material breach. But outside of that, we think that this would be a product that the chief will like, and that you'll find useful as we start to solve some crimes in your community. So unfortunately, to answer your question directly, in terms of termination, it's not something that we offer.
Well, the draft we have has a termination for convenience provision in it,
Yes,
6.2.
and it's immediately terminated with all refunding of fees, except for the $500 removal fee.
It says that it would be effective immediately, except there's a one-time removal fee of $500 per Flock hardware.
Then Mr. Dan Murdoch blessed you, because that is not something that we have offered for over a year here at Flock. So it must have been something that moved the chains along, if I'm being completely transparent.
We'll take it.
I'm not going to hog this stage any longer. I just want to say one more thing, and then I'm going to stop talking and let everyone else talk, which is, I think the reason we're considering Flock is because we care about protecting our citizens. What I want to do is properly equip Chief and your staff, because I have the utmost respect and I want to see you continuing to do the job that you do so well. What I don't want to do is create or provide a tool that might not necessarily save lives or prevent crime, and at the same time really overreach our rights to privacy. And right now, I'm not comfortable with anything in this contract. I don't really see how it saves lives, because including a 30-day, when we're talking about 30 days to solve a crime, that's a crime that hasn't gone reported, is likely property crime, a stolen something, right? Or,
Well, not necessarily. I mean, there's been cases of, someone comes in or, you find out there was like a kidnapping or something somewhere, right? Sometimes it might be delayed. Hey, that vehicle may have gone through this jurisdiction. Hey, it's, X amount of weeks past.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
So with that 30-day window, that's at least given us an opportunity,
Okay.
right? It's also given us an opportunity to potentially connect the pieces, right?
Yeah.
So like, a lot of times we'll see like theft and burglary, and in fact, even with some of these, like vehicular hijackings and everything are, far more serious, right? In the sense of potential violence, that we're trying to start connecting some of those pieces together, right? So it's not necessarily just a small, I don't use the word small piece of Lake Bluff, but the big piece, right? Is this vehicles or this group of vehicles coming through, and giving us a 30-day window allows us just one more opportunity to put those pieces together in the bigger puzzle, right?
And we are also talking about putting a camera on Green Bay and 176. And if I remember your A presentation from the past, 80% of car theft are a quarter mile away from that intersection. That is why we're doing that as well. Okay, and I think that is a direct impact. So I'd like to hear everybody else. I'm sorry, Terry.
no, I'm done. I really,
Here.
really,
I mean, I'm going to piggyback off of what Taryn's concern is with the information dissemination and it not being narrowly tailored enough to overcome the high burden we do have for reasonable expectation of individual privacy. I mean, that's number one for me. And even weighed against the public policy argument of community safety. I mean, I share all of your concerns. I do have some questions about the information sharing. Can it be one way? Obviously, we're going to get hits from leads about cars that are needed. Do we have to share our information with the FBI, for example? If we don't share our information with the FBI, then is it just a worthless tool at that point? Are those things that other jurisdictions have considered or dealt with?
Yeah, no, that is something that is discussed quite often. And just to kind of clarify, the way that sharing works is each agency has complete control over who they share with. So your agency can decide to accept sharing. And forgive me that I'm only using Quincy as an example. My Illinois geography isn't great, but I've been there. It's far away from you guys, I know that. But you can accept from them. You don't have to share back with them. So, sorry, go ahead.
Sure. What about the FBI, though, specifically? That's
So
really.
you don't have to share, accept, or share back, right? So again, your department, every single agency has to request sharing from them and vice versa.
And so with the FBI, has anyone not shared with them in your experience?
We actually don't have the FBI as an organization within the system.
And so how are,
at all.
well, I thought these were uploaded, like you were getting information from leads, correct?
So yeah, leads is through the DOJ.
And then
state DOJ.
if FBI wants to access leads, which they absolutely have access to, they have access to any of the information, and then they can contact our police department, correct?
So the way that leads would work, right now, let's say there's a car stolen in your city, your department would, submit it. It would go into leads as a stolen vehicle. The hits in your town or the images, right, are only shared with other towns that they are sharing with. So they don't necessarily let other towns know unless they're sharing with those towns that vehicle's been seen in their jurisdiction.
Okay, so for example, for a state agency like the Illinois State Police, do any of your local agencies not share with them?
That I'm aware of, no, but that is quite possible.
Okay. And when you're.
And I say that, if I just may add, I'm sorry about that. I say that because most times agencies will reciprocate because, it shows that they're working together. And so there are times I'm based out of California, where there are jurisdictions that can only share within their county, right? And so other jurisdictions right next door understand that, but those are rare instances.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kat. Suzanne, Mary, Shayna.
My question was similar to Catherine's question, which was really setting the contract aside if we can set the parameters of who we share the information with. So if we were to say we were only going to share information with intra-state agencies in Illinois, can the information be sort of forced to be shared by another state or by a federal agency, by subpoena, or other sort of law enforcement? And have you heard of any of the instances of something like that?
Starting backwards, no, I have not heard of any instances like that. You control who you share the data with, and so your department can decide to share only within this state. Illinois does not prevent your department from sharing out of state, so they could. I will say in a state that does, so California prevents sharing outside of the state. Your state does have legislation where anybody accessing data has to affirm that they will only use the data for legal law enforcement purposes that are legal within the state of Illinois, and our system actually makes them check that off, right? So kind of legally verifying that. And then to the last portion of your question on subpoenas, and your city attorney is there, but in our contract, you own the data, and so you will always have the ability to, adjudicate that, and it would have to fall under legal uses in your state if there is a federal agency, for example, that would like access to your information.
But that only applies if we know they're accessing it, right? Like, we don't know what other agencies are doing. I think that's kind of the concern. And I'm not saying this out loud, for you to, like, give me an answer. I'm just saying it out loud.
No, that's an excellent question.
To kind of express the overall concern I have with, the inability for anyone to be able to protect this with AI and everything else coming out in the future and for training purposes. But that was just.
And so just to add to that, the transparency portal, which may have been presented to you all, any resident or any person would be able to, in real time, this is updated daily, see who your department is sharing with, right? So it'll list every single department that they are sharing with.
Thank you.
What strikes me is that the technology is ahead of the regulations here. And some states have implemented regulations, and who knows if those will even be sufficient. So I guess I'm wondering if we're ahead of ourselves, perhaps by a year or two, while this technology ages a little bit and we start to see some of the issues. I go back to the case that was litigated about GPS, and that's what, 30 years ago, we started having GPS or some such number, and that case was litigated all the way up to the court, and as I understand, the Supreme Court, as I understand it, probable cause was required before that data could be accessed. And this seems perilously close to that to me, though I haven't been able to process it all, but that's what's running through my mind is, are we ahead of the regulations on this? Is technology kind of like AI more powerful than we have the ability to regulate around so far? So that's my musings at this point.
Thank you. Mary?
I think I stand alone over here. I think that this technology is appropriate for helping law enforcement do their job, and they've been very clear on that. But I appreciate everyone's concerns. I know they're valid, but that's where I stand on it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know if you want any public comment? I did get an email during the meeting.
I'm trying to maintain a consensus from everything we said, and we said a lot of things at this point. And let me give a shot to that so that we have some idea of where we stand right now. I think we all have a lot of concerns about data for the next 30 days and who has control over it, and we had a lot of questions about it. So what I hear is we have control of the data, and we can actually monitor, audit who accessed our data, and we have the right to grant or not grant access to that data. That's what I hear. Second thing I hear is for training data, this is not the same type of data, this is anonymized, discussion around anonymization of data. And it looks like we're safe with a data that is no longer attached to our community. That's what I heard. Number three, what I heard is termination. If we're not happy, we have termination for convenience. That is immediate, a few $1,000, we're done. Did I miss anything else in this conversation? We have concern about we are maybe ahead of regulation. Number four, that is machine learning might expose a few things that we're not aware of, for example, and I'll leave it at that. Or we're ahead of regulations, that's what you said.
Yeah, the technology is developing faster than lawmakers can keep up with it. And that's what's going through my head. I haven't figured out necessarily which way that cuts. What I'm thinking is maybe 14 days is more appropriate. That's some New Hampshire, maybe. Some states have imposed a limit that's much shorter. So that's one thought I'm having.
And we talked about 30 days being the right duration from Matt and from our chief of police.
Yes, I understand. And to Taryn's point, it's a balancing act. We might miss a few things that happened 15 days ago, but have we
Protected
somebody's interest in their personal data about their comings and goings, such that that's a trade-off that we're willing to make. I have not closed the door on this. I just have questions that I'm trying to sort through as I listen to all of this. I think I'd like to know what we think we would benefit, what the use case is, what the benefit is on the other hand of the cost. And I know I've heard the stories about the Amber Alerts and those kinds of things. I can come up with those examples. So in order to understand the cost benefit, we sort of have to understand the benefit better than perhaps I do. And
I think.
Go ahead.
I think your hesitation is actually based on the role of technology in our society. I mean, this is where I live, and I'm an engineer, so naturally I'm an optimist. And technology is probably good for us until it fails, and and it will fail. And so I think I have lived through many systems that would be great until they failed. And so here we have, we're provided control, we're provided assurance, and I will say assurance that this is great. And there are probably our pitfalls. And so the hard part is an ethical part, that is, what are we granting, what are we opening the door to in terms of data access and capture of data, capture of pictures. Are we capturing license plate, or do we have a possibility to capture a face, a dog, a bicycle in the direct vicinity? And when we saw pictures a few months ago, there was actually a full car, okay? There was a full back of a car. You could actually see a person. So it's a difficult ethically speaking, this is a difficult decision. This is not a clean, perfect decision. No, I personally believe that this is great for our community until it fails. And I'm actually happy that we have a possibility to cut that contract when we think that this is no longer appropriate. Okay?
Can I ask a couple of other questions while we have the experts here? And as I understood it, these systems are being purchased by private entities as well, homeowners associations, stores, and I take it they can share their data with whomever they want as well, and I guess they wouldn't be able to reciprocate. You know, Quincy can't send them the private owner's data, I wouldn't guess anyway, but so I understand that it's not just municipalities that are facing this question, and not just municipalities who are generating the data, right? Am I correct about that?
Yeah, so neighborhoods and commercial, whether it's shopping plazas, hospitals, et cetera, are able to buy cameras. They then provide that information to law enforcement directly. But it's your camera. There's no sharing of local city cameras with a private entity, if that's kind of where your question's going.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. So their data is going into the system,
The
but
local
they're not necessarily, they're not able to pull data back out. They're a
Correct.
private entity.
Correct.
If we don't purchase the system and we want to get access to data from an entity that, or
Lake
a
Forest, for
town who has it,
Yeah.
we just pick up the phone and say, geez, could you check Flock? Because we'd really like to know. Or is there a way for us to get access to other entities' data without having cameras of our own?
There is a cost associated with accessing basically the software without having cameras. So you get that for free if you have your own cameras.
I see. So you could get access to the data without having your own cameras. You could decide to obtain data out of the system without contributing data to the system. Is that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Assuming that they'll share with us without us giving them information back, right?
Thank you, Suzanne.
Yes, and then you're also beholden to kind of what cameras they shared with you, wherever those cameras may be, as opposed to Chief being able to kind of work within the community and put the cameras in places that
Yeah.
he thinks are going to be effective for him and the team to effectively police.
Thank you. I would like also to make sure that we have possibility of comment from the public online. Drew, do we have anybody willing to comment?
Yeah, before I check, I do have an email that was sent during the meeting. It said, this is from Mr. John Pullen, doesn't give us his address, but attached is a news article supporting more license plate readers. As I wrote to you earlier, Lake Forest has 6 to 7 readers at each major entrance to Lake Forest. I think they at Lake Bluff needs to stay vigilant and keep up with this important technology. The article that is linked is from the Lake and McHenry County Scanner, and it states, local news, Illinois State Police set to install license plate reader cameras in Lake County, possibly in McHenry County. And if there's anybody participating via Zoom that wants to comment on this, please raise your hand and you can be recognized. No one appears to be raising their hand.
No. So what I see is, it looks like, 1 minute, Suzanne?
I have one more question. The experts, I know I can hear the bells ringing. So my additional question is, I think you said you could limit our providing data, let's see. So say another state wanted our data, or somebody in another state, and the reason they want the data, their search warrant or whatever their case, is a violation of that state's law, but not a violation of Illinois law. So they've got a case ongoing, a potential violation of their laws, and they say, boy, wouldn't we like to have Lake Bluff's data because we think there's a violation of our laws. Can we, I think you said Illinois limits the provision of data to only those crimes that might be a violation of Illinois law? Did somebody say that?
Yeah, and I think to your point on legislation, Illinois is actually in the forefront legislating here. And so Illinois state law prohibits the use of LPR for kind of enforcing access to reproductive care in states where it may not be legal around you. And so in order to access any of your data, first step, your department has to be sharing with a department out of state. But second step is that department within our system has to be checking off that they are only accessing the system for legal law enforcement purposes within the state of Illinois. So there's those two protections already in place. And so that's kind of how you have that checks and balance there. Does that answer?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
So, thank you.
Now I'm done.
So we had the discussions. I believe that we had the answers, or the discussion at least, we were looking for the last time we met here as a committee of the whole. We went back and forth. We have answers. They might be imperfect. They might be perfect. They indicate that we have control. I don't know how much control we have at the end of the day, but we have control. okay? So I'm asking for consensus. I'm asking if we should move forward with this system to the board. And I think we need to either move forward or we need to put that to rest. But I would like your opinion on that.
Again, I think I stand alone. I think we should move forward with it.
Thank
As a
you.
former prosecutor, it's hard for officers to work cases, and we're not really getting into that. I think it is very important to help them.
Thank you, Mary. Taryn?
I want to provide our officers with every possible tool. I think we have not exacerbated a search for the same kind of tool, but perhaps more localized, that doesn't present the same broad overreach in its contract for what it can use the data for. And I would be open to approving that kind of tool if it met different criteria, but I'm not going to vote yes to Flock.
Thank you. Shayna?
I would be in favor of moving forward with revisions to the contract to address some of the issues we discussed today, including data use and sharing, data retention, confirming that the termination provision remains in place, and any other issues that we think need to be addressed to capture the scope of comments from today.
Thank you. Kat?
I share Shanna's views.
You share Darren's? Okay.
No, Shanna's.
Shayna's view. Okay,
Shayna,
thank you.
sorry.
Thank you. Susan?
Yeah. I'm open to this contract. I haven't resolved for myself yet whether we can contractually protect ourselves sufficiently. But I am willing, with continued attention to the contractual terms, to approve it.
Thank you. So I read as a consensus that as it stands, the contract needs tweaking, and we're willing to go forward with changes to the contract and with a little bit more work behind.
And one of the changes I would like to see is 14 days. I
14
think we
days.
don't need to keep it 30 days, but the chief may tell me otherwise, but I feel like that's a better balance of the various interests here.
Thank you. Does that provide you guidance? Good guidance?
Yeah, Peter, you understand the terms? Yep, okay. So Hector and Mike, we'll be back in touch with you.
Thank you, and thank you to all the trustees for your questions. They were really valuable.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I really
Anytime.
appreciate that. And next is our adjournment for tonight. Could I please have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you so much. We are adjourned.
A few 2-minute break or something?
It's 7:05. Let's reconvene at 7:10. Thank you.